Okay, hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. I appreciate you guys being here. Yeah, so folks, we got a lot going on today, and we're going to cover them. We're going to cover everything in just a second, and kind of get there. Yeah, Mr. Producer always ruins the vibe. That is right, Chloe. Yeah, that is so true. Every time. So for those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, we're usually rocking it out, right before we go live everywhere there on TikTok. And, we're just having a good time. It's an 80s. It's an 80s fest over here. Let me tell you, it is we are raising the roof. They don't do that anymore? Oh. Sorry, Mr. Producer is telling me in my ear that they don't do that anymore. So Mr. Producer is, you got to understand, Mr. Producer is hip. I am not hip. So Mr. Producer was saying, Bishop, they don't do that anymore. So I don't know what the kids are doing these days. I mean, I thought they still raise the roof. Okay. So Mr. Producer. All right, everybody. So I'm Bishop Long. I appreciate you guys being here. Happy Friday to you wherever you are. Let's get to the business aspect, if you don't mind, before we get into the presentation. How's that? Okay, I want you to go to a website, and that website is KGRAD as in dog, B as in bicycle.com, KGRADB.com. So, folks, you got to make sure you go to that website. If you love the paranormal like I do, they have all kinds of shows, not just the paranormal. They have all kinds. As a matter of fact, our guest that we're going to be speaking to in just a second, she has an amazing show on from 9 to 11. So, guys, look, you got to go. KGRADB.com. And you got to make sure you put Bishop as your promo code because you're going to get 30% off your subscription. And for those of you who are interested, nope, I do not get a financial kickback off. Telling you that thank you. They're just very kind to offer that to you guys because you listen to the show. So I think it's pretty nice. So make sure you put Bishop as your promo code. And KGRADB radio is not going anywhere. Just let everybody know about that. So again, KGRAD as in dog, B as in bicycle.com. Now, if you want to go to my website, that's simple. You can go to bishopjameslong.com, bishopjameslong.com. Also, folks, I do have classes available. There are 4 classes that you can take for free. And these are very in-depth classes. I understand, yes, I could charge, but you can't take it with you. So go to my website, bishopjameslong.com, click on the class link, and they're all there for you. And then, of course, the church's website is usocc.org. All right, usocc.org. I do, Erica, yeah. And you can go to the store on that one. So usocc.org. Now, tonight, later on, we will have night prayer as we normally always do. So you can join us if you like. We will be running on TikTok around 9:50 p.m. Eastern Standard tonight. And then, of course, on my other formats that I normally run it will be around 9:45 p.m. Eastern or so. So first, let's talk, yes, because I have to address it because I run the show on 2 different computers. So here on Facebook and KGRDB Radio and YouTube, Twitter, and all that stuff. Over here, I run it on you guys on TikTok. So obviously, we know the big story about TikTok situation. Okay, we all know it. We all know the Supreme Court upheld the decision. At this point in time, no one knows. No one knows what's going to happen. Nobody. People can just guess. At this point, nobody knows. So Apple and Microsoft, they have not stated whether or not they're going to turn off the apps on Sunday. We just don't know. Even though Biden had already said that they're not going to enforce the law as far as punishing, because they can get fined $5,000 for every person who opens the app. The law says they can get $5,000 per person. So at this point of time, Biden said, nope, we're not going to enforce that law. But we don't know. No one knows. Nobody knows. So it's kind of like we don't know. So we'll have to see what happens come Monday and go from there. At this time, I have looked at several different options other than TikTok. And to be honest with you, I've not been happy with any of them. Because there's either the format's wrong or there's just so many complications that go on behind the scenes to be able to run the show properly. We don't know. So I at this point in time, I am not prepared to make a final TikTok But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So anyway, right. I just think look, and let me just say this, if you don't mind, please indulge me for a moment, guys, because this is big news. This is world news. I mean, this is big stuff. I mean, people's lives are completely being changed by this TikTok ban. There are 7 million small businesses that depend on TikTok. And now those people are terrified at this point in time because they don't know what's going to happen to their business. So this is really, really important. And this is going to affect 170 million people. So let me just say this. TikTok, please do not go to Red Note. That is not a smart idea. It's just not a smart idea. There's a lot of Red Note is owned by the Chinese government. Red Note is heavily censored by the Chinese government. Look, I understand you want to protest, but there are smart ways to protest. That is not a smart way because you have no idea what the terms are that you're agreeing to. Unless you can read Mandarin, which I don't know. I can't. So I'm giving, please don't download a Red Note. And not only that, but I have some clergy friends that are in China. And here's what's happening. Because there are so many Americans going over to Red Note. Red Note is basically China's TikTok. Because so many people are going there because it is heavily censored by the Chinese government. Now what's happening is Chinese Americans that are in the United States are having issues because the Chinese government is contemplating creating a completely different server from everyone else that's using it in Red Note because they censor what you do. So don't do this. That's a very bad idea. And also do not download Lemonade. So I'm just trying to help you because Lemonade is the sister company, if you will, to TikTok. Lemonade is owned by ByteDance, the same company that owns TikTok. And they're already, one of the senators said they're going after Lemonade. So I'm giving you a heads up now. If you download Lemonade, you're going to find yourself in the same situation that you're in now with TikTok. Because because ByteDance is located in China and they own Lemonade and they also own TikTok. So it's not a good idea. I'm getting rid of Lemonade because I don't want to go through all this all over again. So I'm getting rid of it. So at this point in time, I don't know where we're going to go. I just don't. I tried Fanbase. I did not like the camera. I did not like the live. So I tried to go you can't expand the picture. You can't do anything. And even on a clapper, you can't. So I don't know. I'm waiting for Neptune to come out. And I'm also waiting there's another one called 3.5. So those are two that look pretty amazing. And I mean, really amazing. But until then, I don't know, guys. I don't know. And that's the answer. So, all right. So anyway, I want to give you guys a heads up on that. Well, Blue Sky is Twitter. I mean, that's what Blue Sky, and I'm already on X. So, and I'm verified over at X. So I don't want to go to Blue Sky. I'm staying to Twitter. Matter of fact, we're running on Twitter right now. So anyway, I just want to give you a heads up on that. After the show, I'll stay and talk with you guys a little longer about what I have found regarding some more apps, and we can kind of have a conversation. And because this is a big deal for a lot of people, and I get it. But tonight we're going to have a really, really interesting and wonderful, wonderful conversation, and I'm absolutely looking forward to it. So as a matter of fact, there's no reason to put subscriber chat only on, guys. There is just no reason because it's going to go away. So I mean, if it gets too bad, I guess we'll put sub chat only on for the trolling. But hopefully, people will be kind, considering the fact this could be the last weekend. Okay. So here is the introduction that we're going to have a conversation. I'm on X right now. By the way, you can go to my profile on TikTok, click on the link tree, and you will see YouTube, Facebook, Twitter or X, Instagram, and I'm going to get rid of Lemonade. And I don't think I'm going to use Fanbase very much. Okay, we'll talk later on about this, but let's get into the show because I think this is going to be something. This is going to be a show that is really If this is the last paranormal show on TikTok, that's what I used to call it when I first started, because I had no TikTok. What the hell? But I mean, if this is my last paranormal show on TikTok, what a hell of a way to end it with this, because I can't imagine on it, and that's not hyperbole. This is, I'm telling you, I can't imagine a better guest than tonight. So I'm going to introduce a very special guest on today's episode. Her name is Andrea Perron. It is not only a captivating storyteller, she is an inspiring figure whose experiences have transcended the ordinary. As the eldest daughter of the Perron family, she lived through the real life events that inspired the critically acclaimed film, The Conjuring. So you've probably seen and heard all kinds of stuff about The Conjuring. Well, she lived it. She was there. Now, her deeply personal and fascinating account of her family's experiences with the supernatural is detailed in her book trilogy. You have to get folks, if you don't get the books, you're missing out. And I'm telling you this. It's called House of Darkness, House of Light. It's 3 books. You can get them on Amazon. You have to get, I own them. I purchased them myself. They are amazing. Truly, they are amazing. House of Darkness, House of Light. And it's Andrea Perron. It's Perron. Okay. Oh, you found it? Good. So beyond her work as an author, Andrea is a passionate speaker dedicated to exploring the realms of metaphysics, spirituality, and the mysteries of the universe. Now, her insights provide a unique perspective on the intersection of our world with the unknown. Now, whether delving into the eerie events of the past or exploring the broader possibilities of human consciousness, Andrea brings a depth of knowledge and a sense of curiosity that captivates audiences worldwide. So as we venture into the stories that transcend the veil of reality, guided by the extraordinary experiences and wisdom of Andrea Perron, we, of course, want to welcome Andrea in just one moment. Remember, she's an author and a speaker. And I'm going to say this, she is kicking cancer's ass. And we're going to talk about that as well. So first of all, hello, Andrea. How are you doing today, my dear?
Oh, Bishop, it's so good to join you tonight. It means so much to me. You are one of my favorite human beings on this planet. And for all that you said about me, I could just put a mirror up and just project all of that right back to you. Because I think that what you do and the following that you have grown over all these years has touched so many lives and has inspired so many souls. And I deeply appreciate you.
Well, I actually remember the first time, gosh, this was years and years. I've known Andrea for a long time. And the first time that I met you, it was at a conference, a paranormal conference, and I had heard about you. And I remember, because I kept looking, it's like, all right, where's Andrea? Because they go, oh, Andrea's over there. And I kept looking, and this is the light that you radiate, Andrea when you see her. Because I was looking around and panning. Of course, I think John Zaffis was over there, and Chip, I think, was over here. And I was looking, and I was like, that's Andrea. You have, if you've ever met somebody where when someone walks into a room and they don't have to say anything, it's just their presence just radiates that joy, because that person has been through hell and back and came out as a survivor. I can't, there are no words that really describe that. So, but you have that it factor, however you describe that it is, you have it.
I'm just, I have friends that I've had since I was 10 and 11 years old. I'm 66 now. And if you asked any of them if I was any different now than I was as a child, they would say, oh, hell no, she's exactly the same. I just had to get to a point where I had the courage
Mm.
to tell my family's story without any fear of retribution or being belittled, or I had to get to the point where I didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
And I did that at age 48
Wow.
when I started writing the books. And it took 7 years to the day to publish all three of the books, which is actually one long extended
Mhm.
story. House of Darkness, House
House of
of
Light.
Light doesn't have what some people in the paranormal field think is the terror factor. Although you've read it,
Mhm.
there are some scary things that happened in that house, but it doesn't. There are a lot of people that work in this field whose stock and trade is fear.
Yep.
And I have spent my entire life trying to dispel that fear, because even though some of the spirits that we encountered at the farm weren't the most pleasant personalities and seemed for some reason to hold some kind of a grudge against my mother, one in particular, one female spirit that targeted her. My mother said that it was the most illuminating, most extraordinary experience of her whole life. And she passed away in June. And she said she wasn't afraid to die because she knew there was something beyond our mortal existence. And even though I miss her terribly, she's with us all the time. And so what it did was it reaffirmed my faith that we don't we don't perish.
Mhm.
Our vessels give up on us after a while, but what we are essentially goes on. And there is such a thing as a soul.
Amen. Amen. The absolute 1,000,000%. And we'll talk. And guys, here's how we're going to focus on, because you know me as well. I'm tired of people putting demons here and God way down here, and I'm so fed
Yeah.
up with that. So we're going to get into the scary aspects of it, because sure, people want to hear about that, but that is not the focus of this presentation. The focus is how Andrea became a survivor, and how she focuses on the light and focuses on the power and overcoming that evil, because so many of you may be dealing with demonic issues. Okay, well, you're going to learn today from a person who lived in the house that the Conjuring movie is from. And believe me, the lessons that I think you'll learn tonight will help you tremendously. So let's start this, Andrew. Can you tell us how you and your family came to live in the farmhouse in Harrisville?
I do believe to the core of my being that we were supposed to. And there is no ancestral, genetic, or familial attachment from my family, my birth family, to anyone that lived at that farm prior to us being there. And yet I know that there was some kind of a cosmic conspiracy that occurred that catapulted our family in 1970 from a suburb of Providence to out in the country, where we could, that's what my mother said, I want a place in the country. I want to get my girls out of the suburb. And there was all kinds of really negative energy and negative neighbors and horrible things going on around us, to the point where she didn't even want to let us out of our own yard anymore.
Mhm.
5 little girls that could be very vulnerable, and we were. And she went to look at that farm unbeknownst to my father. And
Oh.
while she was there looking at it, she knew that that's where we belonged. And she wrote a check out of our family bank account that left enough money in it for milk and bread while my father was away. and put $500 earnest money down on that property. As soon as he got home, he's like, how do I get the check back, Carolyn? What have you done? We don't even have, we had only lived in the house in Cumberland for about 6 years. And he's like, we don't even have equity in this house. How are we going to buy an estate up in, what's the name of the town? Burrillville? He didn't even know where it was. And he was from Rhode Island originally.
Wow.
And the state's the size of a postage stamp. He should have known where, but he didn't. And it was very interesting because the first day, my mother said, just come look at it, Roger. Just look at it. If you don't want it, then I'll find a way to get the check back and null and void. We have 3 days.
Okay.
Which was the law. And we all piled into the car and we went up to the farm. As we were driving through the village of Harrisville, which is where the farm is located, the town of Burrillville has a smattering of different villages, 8 or 10 rather good-sized villages in the town proper. It's the largest town in the state. And so in the village of Harrisville, as we're driving through, I was sitting in the back seat with 3 of my sisters, and my baby sister, April, was sitting in between my parents in the front seat. And I leaned forward and I said, Mom, have we ever been here before? And she said, no. And my dad shook his head, no. It was completely unfamiliar to him. And I knew every piece of cobblestone in the street.
So that was your first impression what was your first impression? And by the way, for those of you just tuning in, I'm Bishop Long, and we're talking to my good friend, Andrea Perron, who grew up in the course, the farmhouse in Harrisville, as you know, the Conjuring movies is based on. What was your first impression of the house when you moved in? So you felt like you had that kind of that deja vu situation,
Yes.
but what was your first impression on the actual house when you moved in there?
I'm home.
Wow. Explain that. Can you explain that? I mean, do you think that where do you think that came from as far as?
I don't know. Honest to God, I don't know. It was just is it like being steeped in warm butter, a sense of belonging there that I had never felt. I was young. I was 11 years old. I had not felt that before. I mean, we lived in Willimantic, Connecticut until I was 6, and then we moved to Cumberland, Rhode Island, and I was 11. And I did not want to leave the house that day. And nothing, absolutely nothing. My father didn't want to leave the house. My mother didn't want to leave the house, and none of my sisters wanted to leave the house. I was not the only one that felt that way. Our whole entire family was like, this is it. We're home.
So it was peace. So what you're saying is when you got there, it was peaceful. It was like heaven on earth is what you would describe it that way?
Yes. And it was June of 1970. And my parents scraped together the money to buy it and closed on the property in December of 1970. And then we moved in on January 11th, 1971, even though we were the owners. The previous owner, Mr. Kenyon, was not yet ready to move out of the house. And the house his son was building for him was not yet ready. So, and it was the dead of winter,
but
when moving day comes, that's it. No matter what, no matter what the weather, you move. And we were in the middle of an ice storm when we moved in. And as we finally got all of our stuff in the house at the end of the day, after I had already met my first full body apparition, and so did 3 of my sisters.
And that's the question that I was going to ask you. So now this house, moving into the house in Harrisville, this was an upgrade from the house that you previously lived in?
No, it was entirely different. The house that we lived in was a 6-room Cape Cod style that had probably been built, probably World War II era. So it was maybe 25, 30 years old when we bought it. And it was very modern. It had every amenity of its time. And we moved into a house that was completed in 1736.
Oh, wow.
So
That's a
we
big
went back
difference.
in time. We literally went back to the colonial period of American history.
Okay.
Well, the Declaration of Independence wasn't even signed until 40 years after that house was built.
Okay, so you move in January during an ice storm, and you're everyone is still happy and excited and pumped up and ready to go. And then at what point did you and your family start experiencing unusual phenomena, and what was that phenomena?
Well, let me go back a little bit by saying that our family visited the house a number of times before we actually moved in.
Okay.
And no one, when I started writing the books, I asked every member of my family. My baby sister April was still with us at the time. And I asked her, and my mother was obviously still with us at the time. Does anyone remember seeing anything, feeling anything odd, strange, otherworldly when we were, all the times that we went to the farm?
Okay.
And uniformly across the family, the answer was no. And that applied to me as well. I felt nothing of spirit at the house. That was not even on our radar. Ghosts were not on the radar for us at all. The way my mother said, we're buying one of the original colonial homes in America. And she was a student of history, and that's what fascinated her about this incredible, massive house. I mean, it was 3 times larger than the house that we were coming from. Everybody had rooms that, they could throw, football games in. I mean, it's so much larger than what we came from. And it wasn't until the day that we moved in, and my dad threw open the back of the moving van and put a box in my hands that said kitchen. And Mom had already gone in the kitchen door with April, who was only 5 years old at the time. And so April stayed with Mom, and the other 4 of us were starting to move boxes, according to our size, our strength to carry them. Mm-hmm. And I walked in the parlor door because it was so cold. I just wanted to get inside the house. And as I rounded the corner from the parlor into the dining room, Mr. Kenyon was standing there packing the belongings of his wife, who had passed away about a decade before. And I turned and I looked to the corner. After I said good morning to him, I turned and I looked, and I suddenly noticed that there was a man standing in the corner of the room, and he was staring at Mr. Kenyon. I'm sure I thought he was a neighbor. The one thing I remember is that I thought he was very oddly dressed. But as I walked past him, I said, good morning, sir. And he looked right through me like I didn't exist. And
did he acknowledge you? Did he acknowledge you when you said?
No.
Okay.
No, he didn't. He was absolutely fixated on Mr. Kenyon. And interestingly, a couple of hours later, my father went into the dining room to talk to Mr. Kenyon about the potential of him staying there with us until his house was ready. And he got very choked up, and he said his son would not allow that. My sister Cindy had seen the apparition. She went into the kitchen and she's like, Mom, who's that man with Mr. Kenyon? He's dressed funny. And my mother said, there's nobody with Mr. Kenyon. His son's on the way. He's not here yet. And then Nancy walked in after Christine had mentioned him and said, I saw a man with Mr. Kenyon, but he disappeared. And that was our wake up call. And then a couple of hours later, Dad's in the room talking to Mr. Kenyon, and the 4 of us were standing there, and all of us could see this apparition, but neither of the adult men saw him.
Oh, wow.
And that's when we knew. We all kind of looked at each other without saying a word, like, I see him. Do you see him? Yes, I see him. Do you see him? Why doesn't Dad see him? Why doesn't Mr. Kenyon see him? And we had this telepathic conversation between the four of us in about 10 seconds, so that we knew not to say anything because they didn't see him, but we also knew that we were moving into a place that had no resemblance to where we had come from, and that we had literally, figuratively gone back in time.
So for those of you who are not familiar as far as human spirits, because everybody thinks they're all demons, we'll talk about that later on, but there is residual haunting, and then there is intelligent. And residual haunting, the theory is that it's just energy that basically recycles itself. There is no intellect. They're really not aware that you are there. It's not an intellect. Whereas an intelligent haunting, there is interaction. They acknowledge that you are there. Sometimes they will try to gesture. Sometimes there's clear intent behind some form of communication. So residual haunting, like for example, in Gettysburg, you've probably seen many of the film and videos where you'll see these soldiers, these apparitions, and they just keep simply going around and around in circles. But there is no interaction. There's no intelligent interaction there. So would you say that this was a residual, or do you think that this was actually intelligent that you saw?
No, I absolutely do believe that he was intelligent. I'm going to tell you something that will be very hard for anybody listening to this to believe.
Okay.
But I'm telling you on my mother's life that this is true.
Okay.
I have two very good friends who I've known since they were little children, Cody and Satori, Satori Hawes and Cody Despian. And they have a method of communicating with spirit that is known as numinism. And when they hold hands or they make an energetic connection, spirit is able to speak through them. I've seen it over and over and over again. It started just before COVID. They perfected their method during the pandemic. And then a few years ago, they began sharing it with others. I have been present at many of these sessions. One night they were at the farmhouse and I was not there. I was down in Florida, but I got a phone call. They were doing a session, and that day that we moved in, my sister Nancy said that she was going to name the ghost Manny. That was the name she gave the ghost because she was 10 years old and he was a man, and it made sense to her. And so he was the first one that was actually given a name. And while Cody and Satori were doing their session, a spirit came through that had never come through at the farm before. And he identified himself as Joseph. And everybody looked at each other because all of them had read my books, and they, felt like they knew the cast of characters. And somebody said, "Did Andrea ever write about a spirit named Joseph?" And the answer was no. And so he could see the confusion, and he came back through and said to them, "Nancy called me Manny." And for 50 years, my mother thought that was Johnny Arnold, who drank horse liniment and died at the house in the mid 1850s. And all those years, my mother thought that was Johnny Arnold's spirit. And we just found out last year that it was Joseph Richardson, one of the original owners of the farm. The Richardson family built the farm, and through marriage, it became the Arnold estate.
Well, we are learning a lot. So this, what do you think about the argument from people that think that every spirit that exists is a demonic? How would you respond to that?
Well, I have a very vulgar mouth, and I would actually,
right.
if I said what I really wanted to say,
right.
Even TikTok might throw me off.
Well,
but let me just say this: nothing could be further from the truth. Most spirit is benign or benevolent. And it is the rarity that something that is evil. I've never met a demon. I've never seen a demon. I don't know if demons exist or they don't. Not in my personal experience. I do know that spirit exists. And I have seen spirit interaction and been involved with it myself, to the extent that I know that there is no veil, that there is, if there is, it is self-imposed by us because we have enough to deal with in our 3D realm, but that we live in a universe of multiple dimensions that all exist simultaneously. There was an incident that occurred at the farmhouse about maybe 5 or 6 years into our stay there, where my sister came running through the house after she'd run into, we were going to go chop wood. And so we're all jumping in the back of the pickup, going down to the power lines to, cut up some dead wood and restock for the winter. And Cindy came running through the house, and she came outside and she said, "Mom, there's a whole family sitting at a table that's not our table in the dining room, and they're having lunch." And she was only, I think, maybe 11 or 12 at the time. And my mother said, "Well, we're going to go cut wood and we're going to let them have lunch in peace because it was their house first."
Oh, wow. So very open-minded then. Yeah.
Yes. Well, she had no choice but to be.
Yeah.
Because at first she didn't believe it either. And then she had to try to convince my father, who was as thick-headed as a bull, and it was terrified that he had moved his family into
Sure.
into an environment in which he had absolutely no control over our well-being. And even it took about a year for him to have an experience that was so intense that he could no longer deny that that there were spirits in the house. There was no other plausible explanation for it. And so it took him a while, but in the process, he really alienated my mother because she was trying to tell him the things that were happening to her, and he didn't want to hear it. And if he wasn't going to listen to her, he certainly wasn't going to listen to his 5 little girls. And then we had the first major manifestation happened in the house in May of 1971, and it changed everything.
All right. Now,
I mean, that's in volume 1, volume 2, it goes, it's 10 years of living in the most intense, illuminating, enthralling, enlightening, terrifying environment that you could possibly ever conjure up in your mind's imagination.
So here's the deal. For those, we'll get to your questions, guys, in just one second. I promise you, we'll get guys. We'll get to your questions in a moment. That way, you can ask Andrea. And but let's get to this. So, can you describe some of the most memorable or chilling experiences that you had in the house, and then can you follow up with what prompted your family to contact Ed and Lorraine Warren?
Well, Ed and Lorraine showed up at our door the night before Halloween in 1973, and my mother had absolutely no idea who they were. A young paranormal group had gotten wind of what was happening at our house earlier that summer. They are the ones that showed up, looked around, and Keith Johnson, who was the leader of the group Pyro, and they were from Rhode Island College, he had an experience that was so mind-blowing, several actually, that he is the one that sought out Ed and Lorraine Warren with his group, and they're the ones that gave the Warrens their testimonial about what happened with them and gave them the information of how to find us. So the movie's about 5% accurate, and it's about 95% conjured in the minds of 2 very, very talented screenwriters who really wanted to tell the true story, but Warner Brothers wouldn't let them because they said whenever they tried with my permission to include really legitimate episodes of things that happened at the house, the suits at Warner Brothers said, "Take that out. It'll run people out of the theater. We're not putting $25 million into a movie nobody's going to stay to watch."
Oh, wow. Okay, so your family... So to make this official, your family was not the one that contacted Ed and Lorraine. They just showed up and said, "We're here."
Right.
And so walk us through then what happened.
Well, my mother and father I mean, this was the 70s, Bishop. You know,
Mhm.
people were polite,
Sure.
well-tempered. Nobody locked their doors
Right.
or left their keys in the car. Okay, it was a wholly different time in America at that time.
Mhm.
And so it was a very cold night. And when they showed up at our kitchen door, my mother immediately opened the door, let them in, made the assumption that this lovely middle-aged couple was lost in the woods, and brought them in to warm them up by the stove and to get some coffee into them. And it wasn't until they came in the house that they identified who they were. My mother was not familiar with anything having to do with, you didn't even know the vernacular of, what's supernatural, what's paranormal, what is this? But Mrs. Warren spoke at length with my father. I mean, with my mother. My father was not there that night. He was out on the road. He owned his own business. He wasn't a trucker. He had a jewelry business that he ran right out of his enormous trunk of his car. And he had customers from Ohio to Quebec to Florida. So he was gone a lot. And so Ed Warren sat down with us, the kids, and we told them some of the experiences that we had. So he kind of conducted an interview with us.
Mhm.
April wouldn't say anything, nothing, because she was afraid that these two people had whatever it might take to make her little friend go away.
Oh, I
And
see.
she had made friends with a spirit upstairs who identified himself to her as Oliver Richardson.
And how old was Oliver?
5.
5. Okay. So your sister has a friend. How old was your sister then at the time?
She was, well, at that time, they met when they were both 5. He
5.
was,
Okay.
and so she had been friends with him and had been kind of keeping him under wraps for a couple of years when the Warrens showed up.
Do you think this was an imaginary friend, or do you think Oliver was a?
No,
Okay. Fair enough.
absolutely not.
All
No,
right. So she was
we
afraid
found
that
his gravestone.
okay. So she was afraid that the Warrens would come in and push Oliver out of the way. So she said nothing. And then what was your impression of them?
Right.
No, what
Maybe
was
she figured if she didn't tell them, then they couldn't make him go away.
what was your impression of Ed and Lorraine? What did you think?
I thought Ed was kind of like a big, fuzzy, huggy bear. And Lorraine, my impression of her was that she was kind of a strict school marm type.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't really want to have anything to do with us. She was fixated on talking to my mother.
Do you think that was out of
So,
respect because she didn't want to be too friendly with kids that that were not hers, that she wanted to address your mom? Do you think that was just because of that, or?
no, she ran that interview with my mother as though she was a police chief. Just the facts, ma'am. That's all she wanted to know.
Okay.
What had happened? When did it happen? How did it happen? And what was the impact? And Ed's job was to kind of get a sense of us emotionally, because I spoke with her later, much later, and 40 years later, and she said she was terrified for all 5 of us, the kids, and knew how vulnerable we were in that house. And she needed to infiltrate my mother's thought process before she could have anything, any kind of a meaningful discussion with us. So instead, she turned the 5 of us over to Ed, and we told our stories to him. So that's how they began compiling what would become their case file.
Well, here's what I don't hear. Explain this to me. So up until now, it seems like nothing. What you're describing, nothing negative happened. Just that as far as you're seeing apparitions, and your sister speaking to you said Oliver, a 5-year-old boy. So up until now, it doesn't seem like there's anything violent that had occurred. So what was the Warrens' point? Was it to document that there was paranormal activity? Why did they think that you were that you were in danger if there was nothing violent occurring? And did they do anything to make it worse?
Within 3 weeks of us moving into the farm, my mother went out to the barn and a hand sigh that was used to bale hay was up on the high beam in the barn, and it started spinning out of control, and it came crashing down onto her neck and knocked her to the floor of the barn and blew her mind. And when she tried to tell Dad what happened, he didn't want to hear it. And she opened up her robe and showed him the bruise around her neck and on her shoulder blade. My mother was also beaten with a coat hanger in what we called the warm room, which was the chimney room off the bathroom, and there was only one bathroom, and it was on the first floor. My mother was attacked. My sister Christine was put inside a trunk that she could not get herself out of. My sister Cindy was put into a wood box that she could not get out of and almost suffocated. Both of my sisters almost suffocated.
Wow.
There were incidents that were literally life-threatening that happened at the farm. Yes.
Now, was this before? Okay, now hold on. Was this before the Warrens showed up, or did this activity started after the Warrens showed up?
These were the things that we started to tell them that had already happened.
So what happened? What happened between seeing this older man who didn't seem to be so aggressive, and Oliver, who's a little boy, who's a 5-year-old kid? What happened? How do we go from having these apparitions that are not aggressive to now all of a sudden that can be a life-threatening situation? What can you fill us in on that?
Well, Mrs. Warren came into the house, and she put her hand on the corner of the black stove in the kitchen and covered her eyes and said, "I sense a malignant presence in this house. Her name is Bathsheba."
Okay.
Mrs. Warren knew absolutely nothing about the history of the house, whereas my mother knew from the town historian that there was a woman named Bathsheba Sherman that lived with her husband Judson over at the Sherman farm. And which was about, as the crow flies, probably about a mile or a mile and a half away from our homestead. And she was accused in the 1800s of having taken the life of a child at the farmhouse. Nobody knew if it was her child or if she was taking care of another baby or what happened.
Right.
There was an inquest. And no charges were filed against her. The baby had died in her care, according to the record. But when the body was examined, it was found that a sewing needle, had been impaled around at the base of the skull, and the cause of death was convulsions. Now, Bathsheba Sherman was tried and convicted in the court of public opinion, although she never suffered any legal ramifications for her presence in the house when that baby died. Mrs. Warren knew nothing about any of this. This is what the town historian told my mother. And she's the one that identified Bathsheba's presence in and around the house, but she then took a giant quantum leap and accused her of being the demonic force in the house. Now, remember, the Warrens were devout Roman Catholics, and everything boiled down to angels or demons, angels or demons. And so the way that she approached this was that there was a malignant, malicious, evil spirit in this house with a demonic force that was attacking my mother. But it wasn't just my mother. All of us were subject to her whims.
Okay.
It wasn't Bathsheba, but Mrs. Warren said that it was and wrote that in her case file. And that's how Bathsheba Sherman was made the villain in The Conjuring, when actually she wasn't the one that was causing the problems in the house. It was the original mistress of the house who hanged herself in 1797 after her husband died.
Now, how do you know this?
Felt very threatened by my mother's presence in that house and wanted her out of there.
So how did you figure out that it was the mistress that unalived herself? How did you find that out?
Well, because at one point when she appeared with all the other spirits, and there were at least a dozen of them that we got to know over time, appeared in my mother's bedroom at dawn. 5:15 a.m. is when the clock stopped. Whenever there was a major manifestation in the house, the clock would stop at 5:15 a.m. And the woman that stepped forward, that had the broken neck, stepped forward and began chanting what my mother perceived to be some type of an incantation.
Wow.
And part of it was, 'twas mistress once afore ye came, and mistress here will be anon. Will drive ye out with fiery broom, will drive ye mad with death and gloom.
So this was, I mean, this was an intelligent haunting. So this was an intelligent.
Yes.
So, okay. Wow. So all right. So we go from Bathsheba being falsely accused, and then what happens now that Lorraine thinks that, and I knew Lorraine. I did not get a chance to meet Ed, but what was the? How do we go from, okay, now it's Bathsheba who's doing this, and then what happened after that? What did they do, and did the activity increase or decrease?
I would have to say honestly that for months prior to their arrival in our lives, the house had seemed, if not dormant, relatively quiet.
Okay.
It's almost like we kind of, established a truce, that it was a peaceful place. But when they came and started really stirring things up, and my mom had been compiling a history on the house and the people that had lived there. And Mrs. Warren asked for her notebook, including all of her drawings of the different spirits and all of her recollections. And my mother was very reluctant to turn that over. But Mrs. Warren promised her that if she took her notebook, that she would just make Xerox copies of all the death and birth certificates and everything that was in it, and that she would return it to her.
Okay.
That never happened. She never gave it back to my mother. And the last time that they came to the house to see if my mother was actually still alive, because the night of the seance, when my father threw them and their crew out of the house, they left not knowing whether or not she had survived what happened to her that night.
Let's talk about the seance. What happened? Can you lead us up to what happened and your father throwing them out?
It was very fast. They had called that afternoon. It was, well before cell phones existed. And they had called that afternoon and asked my mother if they could come. And my father was due home from a trip that night. And while we were having dinner, she told him that the Warrens were going to be coming, and he didn't want any part of it. He didn't trust them. He thought that they were going to exploit our family, and he didn't believe that they were paranormal experts. He didn't believe there is such a thing as a paranormal expert, and I quite agree with him about that. I think the safest assumption any of us can make is we know nothing compared to what there is to know.
Sure.
But they showed up, and they had brought a priest with them who tried to explain to my father that the ritual of seance needed to happen in the house. There was no exorcism. My mother was not possessed. My mother was attacked that night by something that they invited to come into the house. They had a medium and a priest with them.
Why would wait? Whoa! Why would any priest say, "Well, we have to have a seance"? That's not. Why would a priest say that?
I don't know, but I was there and I heard it, and that's actually.
Oh,
exactly,
I believe you. I believe
happened.
you. That should have never happened. A priest would never, ever say, "Let's have." That's trained. That is insane.
It was spiritual malpractice 8 ways from Sunday that night.
Wow.
These people were in way over their heads. They had film crew, they had an audio specialist, a priest, a medium, and the Warrens. And it took them a while to convince my father that this was in Mom's best interest, because Mrs. Warren, actually, if she had been a man, my father would have punched her lights out when she said to him, "If you love your wife, you'll let us do this."
Oh, what the heck? What is okay?
I
So,
know it was so bad, but it was over very fast because the cinematographers had set up their film equipment in the cellar. They were kind of hovering in the corner of the room. All of us were home except my sister Nancy had gone to spend the night with a friend. And Christine was in her room upstairs, right over the dining room. Cindy and I were kind of hiding in the front hallway, and April was hiding on the back stairs to my room. So all of us heard what happened, but Cindy and I actually saw what happened. And the medium, her name was Mary Pastorella, started conjuring the spirits and threw open wide the doors to the netherworld, inviting everything in so that she could determine who the culprit was in the house.
wow.
My mother was sitting in a captain's chair that probably weighed 20 or 30 pounds. All the candles that were on the table were suddenly snuffed out as she was doing her conjuring. And then the table started to lift and rise, and the table had to be 200 pounds. It was solid rock maple. And it slammed down as though the fist of God came down in the center of it. It hit the floor so hard. And then my mother started to levitate in the chair that she was in. And in a split second, she was tossed from the middle of the dining room into the middle of the parlor. And when her head hit the floor, everyone that was present in that house that night thought they had just seen her die.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was terrible, terrible.
That was, I can't, I'm really angry to hear that a priest would suggest a seance. And that to me, everything that you're describing is what you're not ever supposed to do. I mean, that
ever,
to me, it's just,
not ever.
so
but we didn't know that at the time.
You guys didn't know it. No, of course.
You know, they were the supposed authorities.
That's right. That's right.
On this stuff.
You guys were the complete innocent ones. I mean, you were there, and it's like, okay, you looked up to these people, and this really upset me. So okay, so then your mom is thrown. She is not possessed, and she gets hurt, and your father says, "That's it, get out." And your father throws them out. So what happens then? So
that was the night I learned all the dirty words. Okay. He was livid. He was out of his mind. When he tried to run to my mother's side, Ed grabbed a hold of his arm to hold him back, and my father turned around and cold-cocked him and took a man twice his size right to the floor.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're not gonna. If I have a wife and she's she's thrown to the floor, you bet, don't touch me. You know, you've done enough. So he throws them. He throws them out. What happened? I mean, does it calm down? What happens now? When do you guys move out? Explain that. How did that work?
Well, we stayed there for 10 years.
Okay.
And there were a lot of reasons for that. Many, many reasons. But the most important reason, upon reflection, was that we were supposed to be there for as long as we were. We were supposed to have the experiences that we had. And then when the world was ready, I was supposed to tell the story.
So let's we're going to put everything out on the table here. Ed and Lorraine Warren made it a million times worse.
They did, but they didn't. I truly believe they didn't do it deliberately. They were lost little kids in the woods trying to find their way to the light. They had never experienced anything like this. On Ed's deathbed, he told Lorraine to make sure she got the Perron family story told while she was still on Earth, because he always said it was the most intense, most compelling, most significant, and most disturbing of all of the investigations that they conducted over more than 40 years as paranormal researchers.
And see, folks, this is why, when you start doing this type, you start messing around with this, you can make things so much worse and dangerous. I mean, really dangerous. You got to be careful, because when you're in over your head and you're working a case and you realize, okay, this is bigger than what I can handle, it is perfectly okay to say, I need to take a step back and find somebody else who might be more experienced in that area of life. And that's okay. That's okay. And And I agree. I don't think there was any nefarious, reasoning behind what they did. But I certainly think you're right. It sounds like to me they were just in over their head with this situation.
Yeah, they were. And Mrs. Warren, when I met her again for the first time 40 years later in 2012, I met her in California. Warner Brothers had brought us out to have a private screening of the film before it opened. And so it was in March of 2013 that we went out, and she recognized me immediately. And she just wrapped her arms around me, and we talked at length. And I had my sister Cindy with me. I brought her with me for the trip. And she apologized. She said, Ed and I thought we could help you. We thought we could handle this. And she said to me verbatim, we were in over our heads the moment we crossed the threshold of that house.
And it happens. It doesn't make them a bad people, folks. It just makes them. You have to understand that when you work these cases, sometimes you need help. And it's okay to say, and first of all, with all due respect, the priest sounds unbelievably inexperienced. I mean, that to me, as clergy, I'm really frustrated. I knew what had happened previously because I read the books and I've heard. But still, it makes me mad every time.
Shook you up.
Yeah, I know. It makes me mad every time. Every time it's like, good grief. So, and by the way, if you have questions, guys, if someone if you guys have questions, you can go ahead. I'll try to do the best I can to ask. We have a lot of people listening and viewing right now, so I'll do the best I can with the questions. So now you have, it was a real priest. It was a real priest from and this
he was a real priest. Absolutely. He wrote a book. I cannot remember his name, honestly, but he wrote a book, I believe, called Life After Death.
Okay.
And he worked with them. He was the priest that worked with them. And I do not know his name. Zaffis would probably know his name, but I don't. Johnny Zaffis might. But, I didn't identify him personally in it because he played really no part other than trying to convince my father that the ancient ritual that they wanted to perform was perfectly okay to do in terms of ridding a residence of evil spirits.
Now, someone's mentioning the clap game.
Yeah, no, none of that's all made up in the heads of screenwriters. Although we did my sisters played hide and seek in the house and got into some trouble with that. My sister Nancy in particular had a close encounter with a spirit that she was so terrified by that my mother said, that's it, no more playing hide and seek in the house. You just go outside and play in the snow. And, it was safer to sled down into a stone wall than it was to play hide and seek in that house.
Sounds like it. Now, of course, Annabelle's a different story, guys. Annabelle is actually it's a Raggedy Ann doll.
Nothing about it. Yeah. Nothing at all about Annabelle.
Yeah, Annabelle's a Raggedy Ann doll, and they can't do the Raggedy Ann doll because of copyright infringement laws, and that's why the doll that you see. But that has nothing to do with Andrea here. But they put it all together because it's the Warrens cases. So now the house, the situation is in the news, and I'm sure you know what's going on there. What do you think about what's going on, and are you surprised? And what do you think is going to happen with the house now?
Well, as you know, after my mother passed away this past June, a few weeks later, I went to the hospital to have a situation that I was facing diagnosed. And right after Mom's memorial service, I was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer that has spread all through my body. Needless to say, I removed myself from any kind of negative energy, particularly pertaining to what was happening at the farm. I have nothing to do with it. The last time I was there was 2 years ago. And then all the rest of my time, it was a short trip. And then I never left my mother after that until she passed. And then I suddenly got presented with a problem to solve that the universe felt, I think, must have been necessary to get me out of the depths of despair that I was suffering losing my mother. I have not commented publicly on the owner or the farmhouse or the situation at all, even though I am well aware of everything that's been going on there. It breaks my heart in ways that I can't really describe. There are no words adequate to describe how sad it makes me to see the house in this situation. After the barn burned, there was a barn fire in December of 2022, I believe. And nothing's been the same since. If I had $100 million, I would not buy the farm. Wow. Because I feel like my time there, as important as it was, that my time is over. I do want to have access to it, and I would love to see it open to the public again, although I do not believe that that will happen in the state of Rhode Island under the current ownership. Too much has transpired that is being held against the current owner. But I do hope that at some point that the house belongs to someone who loves it as much as I do and is as thoughtful and caring about its not only its preservation, but keenly aware of its vulnerabilities. And I really do hope and pray that I defeat what I have to defeat right now, which is this horrible thing called cancer, which I'm sorry, but get out of my big fat fluffy temple now. Get out. That is my daily mantra, and my faith has deepened. I've always been a deeply spiritual person, but I'm in pretty tight with the higher ups, Bishop. You know I am. Yeah. And I've received a great deal of help, and I'm doing remarkably well on my chemotherapy and my treatment. But I cannot afford to let any kind of negative energy or anything having to do with a situation that I cannot control.
Amen.
Into my world, into my universe. You know, my whole life right now is a trip to the hospital, a trip home, a trip to the hospital, a trip home, and cuddling with my little peanut butter cup, my little chihuahua. Who would have ever thought a chihuahua would have me wrapped, but she does. And my sister, I live with my sister now in Georgia, and all my doctors are here. They're all from Emory University. And I have an excellent care team. And I would humbly ask if there is anyone out there that would be willing to utter a prayer of healing for me. I would deeply, deeply appreciate it.
We will definitely add you to our night prayer. No question. And if anybody can beat cancer, I'm pretty confident it would be you. No doubt about it. So let's.
Well, I do believe that this has manifested in my body for a reason, and that I have to overcome it, as I've spoken with you personally about, that I must heal from this.
That's right.
So that I can help others who are traveling the same path, because it is a journey that no one should ever have to take alone.
So Ethan is asking, can you ask about your relationship with Cody and Satori? Are you still friends? Do you still connect with them?
I love Cody and Satori as if I birthed them myself. I love them. I trust them. I absolutely believe. I know it's not a matter of belief. I know that what they do is as authentic gets. And they have been attacked online. They have been attacked in a multitude of ways. all of it completely unfounded. It makes me so angry because they're very sensitive, very loving young people who have given the paranormal the world, a gift that the world is some people are snubbing their nose at. But what they can do and the communication that they can have with spirit, I have been able through them to speak directly to the spirits that I lived among when I was a child, and get questions answered that have haunted me for decades. Everything, and all verifiable through the history of the house, all of it. They're amazing. They're amazing. And I count them among my nearest and dearest friends, and I think of them as my kids. And I do have permission of all of their parents, they're both sets of their parents, to love them as much as they do.
Yeah, we'll talk about the update on the Conjuring House a little bit later. But actually, we're gonna folks, listen to me very carefully. If you have watched The Conjuring, and if you've seen the movie, and you really want to know what is the truth, not the movie, but the truth, well, this is what you have to do. You need to go to, you can go to Amazon and pick up Andrea's books, House of Darkness, House of Light. It's a trilogy. You're not, seriously, if you really want to know, well, I mean, read it from someone who lived it, who was there. And and we didn't even give 10% of what's in there's so much. There is so much more. So I encourage you. I purchased. I love the books. They're on my must read for anybody who is interested in this and really wants to know what happened versus what's make believe in the movies. House of Darkness, House of Light. That's it. You need to go there. Would you suggest Amazon is probably the best place to pick them up?
It really is,
Yeah.
because if you go through a conventional bookstore, they just tack on, their amount, and the best way to get them affordably. And sometimes they even run them on specials where you can get all three of them for a reduced price. It's 1,500 pages of your mind being blown wide open. Once you're done reading the trilogy, you never think or feel about anything the same way again.
That's true.
And the thing that I think is so miraculous about it, it took a lot of courage for me to tell our family story. And every member of my family, my sister April and my mother, were both with us as I wrote those books. And it is a true chronicling of events that will really alter your perspective on what is and what is not the world as we know it. And rather than living in a very cramped little 3D world, you exit the trilogy feeling like you live in a multi-dimensional universe, and that's the truth of it. And the most important thing about the trilogy I have found in all these years, I'm still the best-selling author in the paranormal. I mean, I'm selling these books like crazy because people are hungry for truth. They want to know what really happened. And the thing that is most important is that as well as I do, that there are multitudes of people that have had paranormal, supernatural experiences, have been touched by spirit, and never told anyone because they didn't want to be perceived as a lunatic, because they wanted to be believed and they didn't know if they would be. And after they read the trilogy, it's almost like there's a transference of the courage that it took my family to tell our story to the reader. And then suddenly they're liberated from their own fear of their own experience and are willing to discuss it with others. And it frees them to be able to share that rather than internalizing it for a lifetime, feeling very separated and very different and feeling like a freak or a weirdo, or, could this really have actually happened to me? Yes, it does. It does happen. It happens all the time. And the three most powerful words in the English language or any other language are I love you. The second three most powerful words are I believe you.
Well, we definitely can concur on both. We love you. We absolutely believe you. We think this is absolutely this was an eye-opening conversation, and I really am so grateful that you took the time for us and chatted about your experience. We are truly blessed. The world is blessed to have you here, and folks, seriously, you got to go get those books. House of Darkness, House of Light. It's Andrea Perron, Perron. Make sure you go to Amazon and pick them up. They're 3 books. You will not want to put them down. There are very few books that grab my attention to where, sometimes like, okay, that's a little boring. But I did not, and again, not because you're a buddy of mine, but because I didn't find one boring chapter. Because actually, when I was like, okay, now I got to read the next. And now I got to read what happened next. Now what happened? Next page. Because I was just so intrigued. And the way you write is very, very gifted, but you actually you feel like you're in the scene. You're in what you experience. You're experiencing what you experience. So the way you write is very, very gifted and talented. So House of Darkness, House of Light at Amazon. Andrea Perron. Yep. Go ahead.
And also, before I scooch, because I've got my KGRA show comes on at 9:00 tonight. I do 2 shows a week on KGRA, and you can also find me on Andrea Perron YouTube. It's on Facebook. It's everywhere out there. But the first one is called Soul School Sojourn, and that is from 9 to 10. And from 10 to 11, my main show is called A World Awakening. And we cover everything under the paranormal umbrella. A lot of people don't know, but my great fascination in life is with the extraterrestrial presence around Earth. And I'm a ufologist before that word was even invented.
Very intrigued on that.
It's out there, and it's easy to find.
Well, and so what's the best way for people to reach you directly, or is there a best way?
Well, most of my focus right now is on my healing, but absolutely. I have wonderful assistants who will put people in touch with me. Anybody is welcome to join me on my main Facebook page. And I also have a smaller group of my devoted fans who I love them as much as they love me. And it's called the Buttercup Brigade. And it's a group, and you can just join. Lynn Ann Bowling is my admin, and Lenny will hook you up. And if you have a direct question for me, she will bring it to me, and then she will get the answer to you. And if you want to be in direct contact with me, she will expedite that as well.
Well, Andrea, I appreciate you so very much. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, and keep rocking and rolling, and keep me updated on how you're doing whenever you can. And I appreciate you so very much.
I want to leave everyone with just one thought, and it's okay to believe, dare to believe. There's something to believe in. And always, always be the beacon of hope and be the light you seek.
Amen. Thank you, Andrea. You're the best. Well, I appreciate you. I really do.
I love you too. I'll talk to you soon.
I love you back, sister girl. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Well, there we go, folks. I tell you what, she's just a wonderful person. I've known Andrea for years and years. Andrea's just one of these people that she's the salt of the earth. She's just she is what she endured. And I love her passion, the passion to teach about what happened. And there's so much light that she brings to the to everyone. So if you ever meet her, if you're ever blessed to meet, you'll know her. As soon as you see her, like, yep, that's Andrea, because she just radiates that light. And we want to thank, of course, Mr. Producer for contacting Andrea. Andrea has a show on kgradb.com and at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So as soon as this show airs, as soon as we hang up, we're not ready yet, but as soon as around 8:50 or so, Mr. Producer has to run over, and then Andrea jumps on, and she has a show. So you can follow her. That's why we tell people go to kgradb.com, and you can watch her. You can watch her shows there. But make sure when you subscribe, put Bishop as your promo code. You're gonna get 30% off. So yeah, but honestly, the books, House of Darkness, House of Light on Amazon. And it's Andrea Perron, Perron. They are really fantastic. They're really, really fantastic books. And I strongly encourage you. If you're interested in the Conjuring situation, well, there you go. So for those of you who don't know what's going on with the Conjuring the house in Berryville, it's facing scrutiny. The owner's behavior. Now the owner decided not to renew its business license. And a little bit, just a kind of a screenshot here that I took. The Berryville Council voted unanimously against renewing the business license for the Conjuring House. The decision was made after the owner, Jacqueline Nunez, was committed to a hospital care twice for some personal private issues. The house's owner has been under scrutiny for her behavior and faced criticism from the public. She and Jason Hawes from TAPS, had a serious spat, and there were some allegations that were made. And so anyway, Nunez has been accused of firing an employee after claiming that the spirit of John Arnold, the original owner of the house, told the employee was stealing. And Nunez also had been charged with driving under the influence and eluding officers. So the house's owner, of course, has said that she believes the house will be shut down once the entertainment license expires, and some say that the house's reputation has been damaged. The owner's situation. They think it's because of the house and the influence of the house and the evil and things of this nature. And as Andrea said, it was built in 1736 and 40 years before the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And as you know, the house was the inspiration for 2013 movie The Conjuring. So yeah, a lot of drama. A lot of drama has occurred with the Conjuring House situation, because you used to be able to go and rent it out, and something happened. Something happened to where the like I said, the business owner just fired an employee, and because, as I mentioned, the owner believed that the spirit of John Arnold, the original owner of the house, allegedly told her that. This ghost told her that the employee was stealing. And so obviously the employee, denounces that. But it's a terrible, the whole thing, it's a sad situation that we see, but regrettably, that's the situation of the house. We don't know. Who knows what's going to happen in the future with the Conjuring House. But see, this is the thing. We have to understand something, that these places, they are no joke. And as Andrea had talked about, how when the priest came in with the warrants and suggested a seance, first of all, that should have never happened. Never. But I also think that it may perhaps is a different time, but even then, a priest should never say, well, let's have a seance. That is just throwing fuel on the fire. That's something you don't do. And I think this is a situation where, as Andrea said, they just simply were in over their heads. See, the problem is when you start doing a seance, and I get it. People will say, well, you can't control what's going to come through. You have no control over that. Now, you can say, I surround myself with white light. The demons don't care about your white light. They don't care. Because when you make a statement that, okay, whatever's out there, come through, we want you to come through, that is the invitation. And you can surround yourself with all white light all day long. but you can't have your cake and eat it too. So you can't say, well, we're going to engage in a seance, but we're going to put rules and regulations that demons have to acknowledge. They don't have to acknowledge it. They don't have to follow your rules. They violate your free will. They don't follow the rules. That's the very nature of a demon. They violate our free will. So the moment that you open that door, that's the Pandora box. And as Andrea said, that once they did that, her mom was thrown. That's pretty serious stuff. So I've met people. I've met people who have done seances, and I get it, and I just disagree with it. I disagree, because here's the God's honest truth. I know an attorney who's a patent attorney, and I've said this now for over 23 years. He's a patent attorney. He's brilliant. If you can prove to me conclusively that you can absolutely guarantee that no evil is going to come through because you spread your white light, let's patent this sucker and we're going to make millions and millions of dollars. Because you can't do it. You can't. Once you say, is there anyone here? Once you give that invitation, you have no control of who takes that invitation, because once the invitation is given, you can't say, but only the good people can come through. They don't care. Demons don't care about your rules. They don't play by your boundaries. And that's the danger. So it's a pretty serious thing. It really is. And so we have to be careful about doing that kind of stuff. So we really thank her for coming on. I want to talk to you guys about some really cool. So thank you, Andrea. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Producer, for bringing that in with us. And of course, make sure you get those books, House of Darkness, House of Light. And we definitely are going to keep her in our thoughts and prayers. Because someone said, what does this have to do with your attorney friend? Because he's a patent attorney. That's what he does. So he creates patents. So in other words, if you can prove to me without question, without a doubt, that you can guarantee that you have some type of power to put over us, that we are protected while doing a seance or something of this nature, prove it to me and I will get it patent for you. So because if you can patent it, then you can make millions of dollars because you own it. But you can't, because it doesn't exist. And it doesn't exist because when you give the invitation, demons don't care about your white light. And that is the God's. I cannot tell you. Listen to me. I have nothing to gain by lying to you. I don't charge for my ministry. I never have. I don't get a salary for being clergy, so I don't get a paycheck. And again, I've never charged in my entire life going to people's homes and bless their homes. I'm not selling you anything. So there is no ulterior motive here other than me telling you the truth. And this is what I've seen. I have seen people do seances, and I have seen people say, I surround ourselves with white light. And I have also seen 5 minutes later, somebody's eyes roll back in the back of the head, and now they begin to slither. Their face contortions occur. But they begin saying prayers backwards as a form of mockery in Latin and Aramaic and even in English. The contortion of the body is so unnatural. So don't tell me about this surround yourself. Demons don't give a damn about your white light. They don't care. And that is the God's honest truth. When you start messing with this kind of stuff, you need to understand there are consequences. Well, Bishop Long, I've done seances for all my life and nothing has ever happened. And then I always tell, yet. Because that's exactly what demons do. They will wait. They will let you get comfortable with doing something over and over to the point where now you have a sense of false security there. Well, nothing ever happens. I've done it 15 times. I'll do it 15 more and 15 more. And then that one time, that's when the demon says, now it's time. And then your whole life changes. And then you call Bishop Long. And Bishop Long, I need your help because I know that you do things for free. Can you please help us? And then I show you this. Well, I'm sorry, but I can't do it right now because I have 21,758 emails in my ministry email asking me to help people for free. I can't get to you. What did you do? I did a seance. Why did you do that? Because I've been doing it, and I've been doing nothing's that happened yet. So that's the truth, folks. Stay away from that stuff. Stay away from it. There's nothing good that comes from it. Nothing. Okay, listen to this, everybody. This is by T.K. Randall. I want to present this to you guys. And by the way, on TikTok, I'm going to be with you guys a little later. So what I mean by that is after the show is over in about 20 minutes or so, I'm on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, Rumble, KGRADB Radio right now. So once we are done around 8:50 or so, then we'll just be with TikTok for a little while, okay? Because we'll have to talk about our situation. So unexplained, T.K. Randall writes this, Unexplained Mysteries, the top 10 modern mystery stories of 2024. You ready? Listen to it's pretty cool, actually. First, a mystery object thought to be Amelia Earhart's plane has been identified. This is number 10. The object had been picked up on sonar and was thought to be the wreckage of the famed aviator's plane. It was not, unfortunately. Yeah, that was kind of a shame. It's back in January, potentially game-changing new discovery in the Pacific Ocean, 100 miles off Howland Island. It was Earhart's destination just prior to disappearing, was thought to have been the potential to solve the mystery once and for all. Of course, it was funded by a pilot and a U.S. Air Force intelligence officer. They funded it. So confirmed in a statement that the new sonar images of the mysterious object have revealed that it is, in fact, nothing more than a plane-shaped rock formation. So it wasn't a plane. Number 9, a mystery as a couple found washed up on graveyard of the Atlantic. So a couple who had been attempting to sail across the Atlantic have been found, unfortunately, deceased in a washed up lifeboat. The number 8 mystery is a mystery man passes away on a beach after performing a black magic ritual. A 65-year-old man has been found deceased on a beach in Spain after conducting some sort of strange ritual. The number 7 mystery of 2024 is a mystery surrounds disappearance of bodies on Mount Everest. So questions have been raised over the vanishing of the bodies of 2 prominent British explorers from the mountain. Now, that's interesting. Number 6, a young boy survives unscathed after a fall from the 16th floor window. Have you heard of this? The 4-year-old who hails from France not only survived the fall, 16th floor window, but somehow also avoided any serious injuries. The number 5 top modern mystery stories of 2024, self-professed time traveler offers predictions of the future. Anyway, a popular social media user has been making various predictions about what will come. No, you know, I get so sick and tired of seeing those stupid videos. It's the same ridiculous things about people going online. Oh, the Pope. They immediately run a social media. Oh, the Pope is opening up all these portals. He's opening the tomb of Lucifer. What are we going to do? How many times? On TikTok have we been asked about the Pope opening those stupid doors? And I say stupid. It's just a metaphor. It's been happening since the 14th century. Every 25 years, every Jubilee year, these doors open as a metaphor to come back to Christ, to repent. And they leave these spaces open to reflect and to pray, to meditate. And then the Pope goes back in and he's the last one to walk and they close the doors. There you go. That was it. That was all. And then people immediately went to social media. Oh, I tell you what, that Pope, he's opened up all those portals. We're going to have some crazy things going on. Oh, for crying out loud. Anyway. And it's just like this self-professed time traveler. You know, Mr. Self-professed time traveler, do me a favor. See, I go to people's homes for free. If you're watching, I don't charge. I have people who help, very few. And I've been doing this now for over 20 years. So do me a favor. Why don't you contact me and tell me what next week's lottery numbers are? So then I don't have to constantly worry about having to figure out to raise money to get to people's homes in California or New York or wherever else. But that hasn't happened yet. I mean, it's a good thing, right? Still hasn't happened. I wonder why. Anyway, the fourth of the top modern mystery stories of 2024, a man vanished without a trace, seeking what he called a vibrating cave near Area 51. That's a true story. So the disappearance of Kenny Veach still remains a topic of debate and intrigue almost 10 years on. So yeah, why throw shade? Oh, hey, I'm from Kentucky. I live in Kentucky, by God. I tell you what, by God, many years ago, when I worked for the Department of Fish and Wildlife, this guy, God love him, he was country as you can be, but he always ended his sentence with "by God." I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna get me a Pepsi, by God. You want one, by God? I mean, it was everything was by God, everything. So, I live in Kentucky, so there we go. Oh, yeah, in Kentucky, where we go to family reunions to meet our future husband and wives. Okay, there we go. Now, number 3, the third story of the 10 most modern mystery stories of 2024. Google Maps image allegedly shows a large door in the Antarctic ice. True story. So the controversial image was recently picked up by news outlets after being shared on social media. So you need to, if you're interested, you can check that out. Number 2, a psychic looking for a man's missing daughter finds human remains. The psychic discovered the skeletal remains of a person behind a bowling alley, but there was a twist in the story. You have to look that up. Let me tell you this. People ask me about psychic and mediums. So here's the deal. I'm very skeptical. I'm very, very skeptical. But I do know people that are legitimately gifted. I met them. I know them. Chip Coffey is a friend of mine. Willie Windwalker is a friend of mine. These 2 individuals are very gifted. I used to be a chaplain of a major metropolitan police department, and this was many years ago, and a medium had contacted the police because there was a missing persons. And this medium told the police where they could find the remains of their loved one. I was there on the scene. I can't explain it. But I was there, and the police were, they were 5 feet from where the medium told where they could find the remains of their loved one. Now, this family was hardcore. I mean, hardcore against psychic mediums, that they're all evil. They're doing the work of the devil. I mean, they were really, really hardcore. Their whole entire opinion changed because they were able to take the remains of the loved one and give them a proper burial. Now, this medium didn't do this, obviously. But I was there. I saw it. I was there with the family, and I can't explain it. Even to this day, I cannot explain it. And people say, well, it's a demonic. Folks, I'm telling you something. As an exorcist, demons will never give you peace of mind. Demons take your peace of mind. And so this gave the family closure. So you can make that what you wish, but I saw it, I was there, and the family no longer feels that way. And yeah, and by the way, Chip, please keep Chip in your prayers. Chip was actually in the hospital for quite some time. He almost lost his life. So I talked to him the other day. He was in rehab. He's going to be in rehab for a bit. He was in trouble. He had a different strain of COVID, or the coronavirus, I should say. And it caused severe issues. I mean, he almost lost his life. So he was in trouble. So now he is doing better. It's going to take him some time on rehab. So friends, certainly keep him and also keep Andrea in your prayers, because Andrea is battling, as she talked about, this cancer. She is pushing forward. So let's definitely keep both of them in your thoughts and prayers. And the number one top modern mystery story of 2024 was a mystery of a plane that vanished in 1971 has been solved after 53 years. So the private jet and its passengers had vanished without a trace, leading to decades of fruitless searches. So you can Google that, and then you can find out what that's all about. So I just wanted to share that with you because I thought that was pretty cool. Here's I've got to share this too. This is also by TK Randall. And again, for those of you on TikTok, in about 10 minutes, we'll wrap the show up and I'll stay with you guys for a little bit longer. These are the top 10 unexplained mysteries. The top unexplained mysteries, the top 10 most bizarre stories of 2024. These are the most bizarre stories. Number 10, there is, and it's true, because when I saw it, I thought, well, that's kind of weird. There is a clip that shows a figure walking on a cloud in a weird optical illusion. You might have seen this. The footage was recently shared online after being filmed in Handan, China, back in August. So you can look at its Handan, Handan, China, and just type that in Google, and you'll be able to find it. It's pretty cool, actually. It really is. It's neat. Number 9, the ninth on the list of bizarre stories of 2024 is this: a man falls down a 130-foot shaft that he dug under his house to look for gold. Anyway, the man had dreamt that there was gold underneath his kitchen, and then decided he spent over a year digging straight down. No gold. Number 8, the 8th most bizarre story of 2024. Police called out after a nuclear missile found in a man's garage. So the authorities were alerted after the owner of a missile attempted to donate it to the military museum. Of course, it wasn't operable, but you might, if you have not checked that out, you just Google that. Again, the authorities were alerted after the owner of the missile attempted to donate it to a military museum. The 7th most bizarre story of 2024: man with 3 legs waits at railway crossing in a weird viral clip. So it's a very strange clip that has appeared on social media showing a man with an anonymous extra limb. So you might want to check that out. Okay, number 6. A man is found guilty of using cloned animal parts to create a giant Franken sheep. The 80-year-old man had been attempting to create an enormous hybrid animals for hunters to unalive on his property. Did you hear about that? Have you ever heard? That is one of the worst stories I've ever heard. But yeah, it's true. So the 80-year-old man had been attempting to create these enormous hybrid animals for hunters. So the elaborate scheme, which was an inventive and clever as it was totally illegal, was cooked up by author Jack Schubarth. He was this owner of an alternative livestock ranch in Montana. And according to the U.S. Department of Justice, in 2013, Schubarth had begun an elaborate scheme to produce gargantuan hybrid sheep by illegally importing the biological tissue of Marco Polo sheep, the largest sheep species found anywhere in the world, native to the... what's wrong with these people? So then he proceeded to artificially impregnate his female sheep to create a new hybrid species. The new gigantic Franken sheep could then be used to provide sport for trophy hunters. So it had all been going according to plan until he was caught by the authorities. Good. Said this was an audacious scheme to create massive hybrid sheep species to be sold and hunted as trophies, said Assistant Attorney General Todd Kemp from the Justice Department Environment and Natural Resources Division. And in pursuit of this scheme, Schubarth violated international law and the Lacey Act, both of which protect the viability and health of native populations of animals. The guilty party could now face 5 years in prison and a fine of $250,000. Anyway, there is also another one, number 5. Dubious video clip shows an alleged Bigfoot sitting against the tree. A highly questionable piece of footage has emerged showing a supposed Sasquatch in the state of Oklahoma. I did see that video. It's, in my opinion, it's a costume. The number 4, school district goes into lockdown due to Bigfoot roaming the grounds. Guys, this is a true story. The Firelands local school district in Ohio was locked down, and this was in 2024, for a very strange reason, and because they believed they were seeing a Bigfoot roaming the grounds. So you might want to look that up. You can read a little bit more. It's the Firelands local school district in Ohio. The number 3, strangest and bizarre stories. A workman steal woman's entire driveway in bizarre scam. Okay, so one resident of Apoca, Florida, was dismayed to discover that someone had made off with her driveway. And number 2, Google's AI offers some strange advice on how to capture Bigfoot. Wow. So far, nobody has been able to prove Bigfoot even exists, let alone capture one. So now how would AI approach this major problem? Well, that's a good question, and I have the answer for you. Now, whether artificial intelligence, this is again by T.K. Randall, and recent piece on Bigfoot, the Daily Star, this is exactly what the author did. The artificial intelligence consulted in this particular instance was Google Bard AI, which was asked the somewhat tongue-in-cheek question of how one might go about capturing a Sasquatch. Well, the AI's response was bizarre, to put it mildly. To begin with, it suggested that prospective Bigfoot hunters employ elaborate displays with flashing lights, strange sounds, and irresistible scent to pique its curiosity and draw it out. And then, of course, it suggested that a giant net be used to actually capture the animal because the average Bigfoot is large enough to be caught in a giant net. Yeah, you go ahead and do that. And if one actually exists, we'll see how far your net actually goes. And then number one, this is the strangest, the most bizarre story of 2024. An extreme eater passes away during a live stream while eating 10, how much of this? 10 kg of food? Good grief. So, South Korea. The phenomenon, which originated in South Korea, is known as mukbang. Typically involves an individual eating a large amount of food while live streaming the whole thing to their fans. All right. So most recently, a 24-year-old from China literally passed away during a live stream in which she attempted to consume over 10 kilograms of food, including cake, chicken, and seafood. That's a lot. According to reports, she actually ended up in a hospital the day before due to gastrointestinal bleeding caused by overeating. But incredibly, this hadn't stopped her from continuing to binge on the following day. I'm sorry, but with all due respect, if you have gastrointestinal bleeding because you overeat, you probably should stop overeating. But anyway, she's no longer with us. Overindulging in food is, as you see, quite dangerous and life-threatening. For those of you who are listening on podcasts, I'm going to say good night to you guys. Yeah, we are going to wrap things up. I'll be with you guys there on TikTok in just 1 second. So I want to remind everybody that we are going to be here tomorrow. Tomorrow nights, we have our open mic night where Judy Ann comes on, and I don't know if Miss Wilma will be here. We just goof off, have a good time. And then, of course, it was Sunday. We might not be on TikTok. We'll have to see. We have night prayer at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And those of you on my Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, you guys will be able to watch that. My friends on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, Rumble, and KGRADB Radio. Remember, I tell you, your value does... Oh, no. Before I do this, wait, back that train up. Next week, the show, I'm going to have on Andrew. Andrew was the young man that was filmed in the Love Has Won, the documentary. If you've not seen that, It's called Love Has Won, where a woman was claiming she was Mother God, and she had three or four father gods. Andrew was one of those father gods. And Andrew has agreed to come on to the show to talk about his experience. If you have not seen Love Has Won, you need to watch it. It's on streaming devices. He's going to be joining us next week. That's going to be a very interesting video, presentation. So remember, friends, I tell you, your value does not decrease based on someone's inability or refusal to see your worth. You're priceless, and don't let anyone tell you or convince you otherwise. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, Rumble, and KGRADB Radio. Good night.